Welcome to Tigrai Television. I'm Mary Niman will be presenting the news for you today. Stay tuned. President Debretsion Gabramikael wrote to AU's chairperson Moussa Faki Mohammed expressing readiness of his government to participate in the African Union proposed peace talks that is to take place in South Africa. The president asked if cessation of hostilities is part of the substantive agendas on whether there will be an additional actors to be invited as participants, observers, or guarantors. On the 1st of October 2022, African Union's chairperson Moussa Faki Mohammed had sent a letter to President Debretsion Gabramikael inviting the government of Tigray to participate in an AU-convened peace talk that is to take place in South Africa on the 8th of October 2022. External Affairs Office issued a statement on Wednesday condemning the drone attack on IDPs in Adadaro, saying the international community's failure to take concrete measures against Ethiopian and Eritrean governments for violation of international human rights law emboldened the two governments to increase the level of brutality on the people of Tigray. The office said what Tigray needs is for the international community to live up its promises of never again by taking practical measures to stop the ongoing crimes on the people of Tigray. Following the drone attack on Tuesday, medical director of Suhul Hospital in Shira says the hospital is unable to provide adequate treatment to the 87 people who were injured. The number of deaths from the bombardment has gone up to 65 as the region continues to struggle from the siege-induced lack of medical supplies. Abil Tsagabo has more.
Ethiopian and Eritrean governments continue to bombard civilian installations in different parts of Tigray almost on a daily basis. On October 4, 2022, another drone attack was yet conducted in Adaro, killing at least 65 displaced. We spoke to survivors of the attack who say there were no military installations on this spot.
I am displaced from Western Tigray. There weren't any military installations there. We all were civilians. I went there to find my relatives who were displaced from Western Tigray. I was hit there. All of them were innocent civilians. I don't know where it came from. All I remember is when it hit. There were people displaced from the district of Tsagada in Western Tigray. There were also others from Kafta Hamura and few from Maigava.
The victims say the purpose of these attacks on civilians in a residential area is to eliminate the people of Tigray.
It is to exterminate the people of Tigray. What is the fault of the people of Tigray? We suffered all along to come here, and we're facing these attacks now.
The
purpose is clear. It is to annihilate the people of Tigray. Soldiers fight soldiers, but killing innocent civilians is a whole nother thing.
Medical director of Suhul Hospital Shira, Dr. Fassad Ngarumedin, says 87 individuals have been admitted to the hospital following the attack and that the hospital is unable to provide adequate treatment in light of the more than 15 months long siege.
We have seen around more than 87 civilians who are attacked, and this is very devastating situation. Here in our hospital, we have no medicine. Patients are coming attacked, having a different degree of severity of attack, and some of them are dying due to lack of medicine. We have no medicine, so we are living in a very hurtful situation.
In a briefing on Wednesday, Director General of the WHO, Dr. Tedros Adhanom, called for an end to civilian deaths and suffering in Tigray. Dr. Tedros said that the conflict should not be used as an excuse to collectively punish more than 6 million people, stating that it was a crime against international laws. Take a listen.
We urge the Eritrean and Ethiopian forces to end the war because they can unilaterally end this war. They can end the siege, and they can give peace a chance, because this conflict should be resolved peacefully. But whatever conflict there is, punishing civilians collectively, 6 million, is against the international law, and it's a crime. So there is no change. It has actually worsened. But not only that, maybe you're following the news. There is daily bombing, including using drones, being attacked, civilians being attacked in Tigray. The recent one was yesterday. We got the news that more than 60 civilians were killed. And this is a repeated drone attack and air strikes that's killing civilians. And since there is no medicine, in addition to those who are dying, there are many injuries that cannot be saved because there is no medicine. So people are dying because of even minor injuries because of lack of medicine. So this is happening on our watch, more than 23 months now, and more than 6 million people under siege and being collectively punished. And I urge the international community to pay attention and resolve this problem. This is in addition to the call I made to Eritrean and Ethiopian governments to end the war, to end the siege, and choose peace. I repeat again, they can stop unilaterally the war.
In his speech delivered on the behalf of European Union's High Representative Joseph Borrell, Commissioner for Agriculture, Janusz Wojciechowski said EU will present a resolution to the United Nations Human Rights Council asking for the extension of the mandate of the International Commission of Human Rights Expert on Ethiopia. In a debate in human rights and humanitarian situation on Tigray at the European Parliament, the Commissioner says all allegations must be investigated and accountability should be ensured. Let's have a look.
European Union is also appealed by the gravity and scale of human rights violations and abuses perpetrated by all parties to the conflict since its beginning. Those allegations must be investigated and accountability ensured. There will be no durable peace, no reconciliation without justice for the victims. The European Union will present a resolution at the Human Rights Council renewing the mandate of the International Commission of Human Rights Experts on Ethiopia to allow for further comprehensive, independent and transparent investigations and accountability mechanisms to complement national efforts. The European Union doesn't forget the people of Tigray and those suffering from this man-made crisis. 2 years have passed since the start of the conflict. There is no more time to lose. Thank you.
Alliance of Civil Society Organization of Tigray Aksot issued a statement condemning the recent aerial strikes and civilian casualties in northwestern Tigray, Adadaro town. The organization began its statement by expressing its deep-felt sorrow by deaths and injuries of IDPs that included children, women, and the elderly, saying that the 2 rounds of airstrikes are implications to the gross violations of international human rights and humanitarian laws. The organization, having sent its condolences to the families of the victims, strongly suggested for the international community, including relevant regional and global governance bodies, to and the UN to undertake objective and impartial investigation into the aerial strikes and the indiscriminate shellings of various places in Tigray, and most importantly, to hold perpetrators accountable of their crimes. Aksot also called on the parties to the conflict in general and the Ethiopian and Eritrean armies in particular to respect international human rights and humanitarian laws and apply the principles of precaution and proportionality with regard to their military operations. Tigrai Interreligious Council wrote an open letter to different international organizations, including the World Church Council, World Interreligious Council, the United Nations, and the African Union, urging for an immediate ceasefire. The council stated that it believes all kinds of atrocities, including sexual violence and mass killings amounting to genocide, ethnic cleansing, and war crimes, were committed against Tigrayans. The letter also discussed that attacks against Tigrayans were started ahead of the war, when Tigrayans were forced out of their homes, imprisoned, and killed in different parts of the country. The council urged the aforementioned organizations and the international community to put enough pressure on the Ethiopian government to open humanitarian corridor and restore basic services to the region. The letter also demanded immediate withdrawal of Eritrean forces from Tigrayan territories. Tigray Interreligious Council asked that independent investigators and media are allowed into Tigray to document and reveal atrocities in the region. As we continue on, our reporters spoke with family members of victims in the Adidaro massacre that took place on September 27th. The consecutive airstrikes by Eritrean forces claimed the lives of 8 civilians and injured 25 more. The airstrike has left an immense scar on the family members that are left to pick up on the wreckage. Sarah Kalali has more.
What seemed to be a peaceful morning in the town of Adidaro in northwestern Tigray soon turned into bloodshed as Eritrean forces conducted consecutive aerial bombardments, killing 8 civilians, most of which were children. Image of the airstrike is still very much vivid in the minds of mothers, family members, and neighbors that witnessed children's bodies being dug out of the wreckage on the morning of the Mescal holiday. Many victims of the attack say they were at home with family members when out of nowhere the jet began its attack.
My name is Soliana, and this is where I live. On Mescal holiday, we were at our home having coffee.
I
was sitting here. My pregnant daughter was sleeping over there, and her daughter was by the bed. We were talking and playing. Out of nowhere, it buried us in the rubble.
It was the holidays, so we were just having coffee. I have never imagined something like this would happen to us.
Soliana stands in the ruins of what used to be her house and tells us about the victims that died that day. Fortunately, she herself was dug out of the wreckage alive, while the bombing buried a 3-year-old child and her mother, killing them instantly.
It was this house here. This is where the door used to be. They only found some parts of her daughter's body. You can see that her shoes were left there. She was playing here. This is the dead child's shoe. She was playing by the door. Her mother used to beg for food, and her belongings you see here, people gave them to her. She didn't have anything. The large hole on the ground you see here was due to the airstrike. It wasn't here before.
Michuti Tasfai, an 8-year-old girl, would also be buried in the rubble, along with her pregnant mother and her grandmother. Masal Burhana, Michuti's grandmother, says the airstrike killed Michuti instantly, while her mother Bayanish was able to survive the attack.
My grandchild asked me for food. She was just eating over there, and we were watching TV. Out of nowhere, the airstrike hit and buried us here. There was a small hole where the wreckage had buried us, enough for me to scream out of. I screamed for help. I was listening to my daughter's voice at first, but soon it stopped. People came and dug me out of where my head was sticking out. When they dug me out to my chest, I begged them to save my children. I asked them to let me stay there and instead dig out my child. I told them Michuti was over there and that Bayanish was here. When they dug my daughter out, she was unconscious and bleeding from her mouth, but they told me Michuti had instantly died.
Mahlit Kidana is also one of the children that lost her life that day. Mahlit had been living with her aunt, Mi'isho Kidana, after losing her mother at the age of 3.
Around 25 people were injured, while 8 died. 6 of them died right away, and the other 2 died in a hospital. My niece was killed too. Her mother had died when she was 3, and so her grandfather and I raised her as her parents. We didn't think this would happen. There is no military movement here. This is just a neighborhood of the poor. This is Mahalet Tigrai. She is my niece. Her mother passed away when she was 3. She was killed when she was in her house.
On the day of the attack, another mother lost a child. On her way to a hospital in Shira, Astil Gabramaskal says her daughter died in her hands, while the airstrike left her son with a head injury.
I have never imagined a jet would hit a place like this. Unfortunately, it did. And I lost my daughter, Milian Shmedlis. She died in my hands. I took her to a hospital in Shira, and she died in my hands. And my son was hit in the head. Fortunately, he's alive. There's nothing left from the wreckage. No food, nothing. I don't know what they wish to gain by bombarding us. Civilians that work hard for their living, whether it is by scrubbing dishes or anything.
The Adidaro massacre on the 27th of September was not the last residents of this small town had to endure. Ethiopian and Eritrean forces would conduct drone attacks on the IDPs in the town just weeks after the first strike, killing 65 and injuring scores more.
With the resumption of hostilities, the food aid they used to trickle into Tigray has been completely blocked. Accordingly, Tigrayan children are exposed to severe acute malnutrition, and treatment remains unavailable, as many hospitals in the region have run out of essential medical supplies. Aragay Garumkel has more.
Helfe Atzwaha is a resident of Adikala, a village around Mekelle. We found her at Mekelle Hospital with her 3 years and 6 months old daughter, Azmaru Berha, who has been suffering from severe acute malnutrition. Helfe said that her daughter has been suffering in this way for over a year now, without showing any improvement.
Her arms and legs are swollen and unable to stretch. She has a high fever. On the top of that, she has poor appetite. We've never got a proper sleep at night since she got sick, as she suffers a lot and cries the whole night.
According to Helfe, Azmar was a very healthy child before the start of the war on Tigray. But after she got sick, she didn't get an immediate medical attention, as the health center at the village was destroyed by Eritrean soldiers.
She was a very healthy child, but after she got sick, she didn't get immediate medical attention, as the nearby health center was already destroyed by the Eritrean troops. When her condition got worse, I took her to Eider Hospital, but no solution. And now we're at Mala Hospital for the past 3 days, and she hasn't gotten any medicine yet.
Helfe also said that she feels heartbroken to see her little daughter in such kind of suffering without getting a proper medical attention.
It breaks my heart, especially when I see our mates running around. I always cry by observing her continuous suffering.
Sister Jambar Mammo, a coordinator of the pediatric unit of Mekelle Hospital, said that the hospital is no longer able to provide food or other medical supplies for its patients due to the ongoing siege.
We're unable to provide milk and other essential medical supplies for the children who are suffering from malnutrition. We're even forced to reuse medical gloves.
Children in Tigray are suffering and dying from lack of food, as the Ethiopian government has been determined to shut down basic services as well as block food and medical aids from entering Tigray.
A mother of 4 sheltering in an IDP camp in Adigudom finds it difficult to feed her children as living conditions in the camp continue to deteriorate. Our reporters spoke with the mother to see how she's been coping. Bashawi Haftu was displaced from district of Kafta Humara in western Tigray and is currently sheltered at an IDP camp in Adigudom. She's a mother of 4 and she says she hasn't received food or other type of aid since she arrived at the IDP camp, which has consequently led her and her children to face severe starvation.
They say there is no food aid for us, so I just beg food from people to feed my children. I even borrow the plates and spoons to eat with. I'm in a very difficult situation.
Bashawi also mentions the deteriorating living conditions at the IDP camp, saying that they continue to suffer due to the exceedingly varying temperatures of their shelters during days and nights, saying that they're forced to sleep on bare cartons without any beddings or mattresses.
As you can see, we don't have beds on which we can sleep. We're sleeping in these cartons and steels. During the day it is very hot, and during the nights we suffer from extreme cold. We don't have any beddings or covers for when we sleep, and when it rains it drips into our shelters, filling it with water.
Kasai Hailu, coordinator at the Adugudum camp, says 4,000 of the IDPs sheltered in the camp were displaced from Western Tigray, and plenty of others were also displaced from the neighboring Afar region.
These IDPs have signed up to be aid recipients for about 7 months now. The international community is aware of them. There are over 889 IDP households in Adugudum. There are also IDPs from Afar. The number of IDPs in Adugudum is vastly increasing, and therefore the international community needs to act immediately and help those in dire need.
Human rights violation and atrocity crimes have forced more than 1 million people to flee their homes in Western Tigray. Survivors we spoke to say Tigrayans were systematically targeted and forcibly displaced. Mintakidana reports.
The ethnic cleansing campaign on Western Tigray by Ethiopian forces and its allies has taken the lives of many innocent Tigrayans and left more displaced from their homes due to the atrocities committed on their areas. Our Kubilhatu and Melash Takhla are from Turkan in Western Tigray. They say allied Ethiopian and Eritrean forces were systematically attacking Tigrayans to get rid of Western Tigray of its majority Tigrayan population.
They were shooting when they arrived in our neighborhood. They were selectively shooting Tigrayans, saying the land doesn't belong to them and that they should leave the area.
All this started on October 25th of 2020. That day we were working at our farm and they attacked the area using heavy artillery, tanks and jets. Many civilians, including children, have lost their lives that day. Many animals were killed too. They massacred Tigrayans brutally, saying that we were anti-Ethiopians. They murdered people in broad daylight, in the place we lived for decades. This was done to us for no particular reason except for our Tigrayan identity.
The IDPs also say they were prevented from burying the bodies of friends and family members, and that bodies were left on the street for days, being eaten out by dogs.
The worst was when they prevented us from burying the bodies. The bodies were left on the streets and were eaten by dogs and vultures. It was impossible to bury the corpse of those that were brutally murdered. This is an act of inhumanity.
The IDPs add that all their belongings were looted by the invading forces and that they are barely managing to survive due to the siege imposed on the region.
They took all our livestock in front of us. They looted our belongings and there was nothing we could do. We let them take everything. We are not receiving humanitarian aid due to the siege. Life is really difficult here, especially for parents, as we are not able to provide anything to our children.
We are living in these plastic tents, but we don't have the simplest rug to lay ourselves on. We get 15 kilograms of wheat every 5 months, and as you can see, we're barely managing to live.
The IDP say the international community is not giving Tigray the attention it needs.
I don't think the international community is giving enough attention to the crisis in Tigray. All they do is release statements of concern, which isn't obviously improving anything in our life. I believe this is because we are black.
I think the international community has denied the people of Tigray the attention they deserve.
Well, that wraps up our news for the hour. Thank you for tuning in.